For many years now, different administrations have been going back and forth on the removal of subsidy. But just recently, the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari took the bold step, bowing to long-standing pressure to deregulate the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry through the removal of subsidy. Now, this is coming at a time when the global oil market is grappling with low demand and subsequent price collapse introduced by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in its defense, the federal government says the subsidy removal will free up funds for various tiers of government to develop critical infrastructures in education, health, transportation, and other sectors for their benefits. With this newly effected policy, Nigerian government will no longer pay for under-recovery or subsidy on petrol, which means an average Nigerian will be paying for more for the consumption of premium motor spirit. This recent announcement by the federal government was met with public outcry by Nigerians who already have to deal with the economic downturn introduced by the COVID-19 lockdowns, where job losses remains on the rise, as well as hiking food and electricity tariffs, all at the same time. I have joining me now live via Skype from Isolo in Lagos to make more sense of our topic of discuss today. He's the Chief Consultant, Adedipe Associates Limited, Dr. Biodun Adedipe. Thank you very much, Dr. Adedipe, for joining us this Monday on the show.
Thank you so much, Tolu, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Yes, a lot has been said about this move by the federal government. A lot of comments for and against. But many are saying that even if we are to take away subsidy, what about the timing? What do you make of the timing? And what fiscal benefits would likely emerge and over what period, Dr. Adedipe?
All right, thank you so very much for that. I think it's good for us to put the issue of subsidy in its proper perspective. Because there is a narrative that seems to paint the picture that subsidy is negative. It is not. Now, conceptually, in the study of economics, subsidy simply is a situation where you have a desire to keep the price of a commodity at the same low level where it is, or you want to make that price competitive, which means it is in the form of a grant that you give to a particular industry or a business organization in order to achieve that, which means subsidy serves any of two purposes. The first is welfare in nature, which means keep the price low so that you won't see an adverse effect on the standard of living of the people within that environment of the policy impact. Now, the other side to it is to keep that particular product or industry competitive, in which case you are comparing it with the external sector producers who also bring similar products or substitutes. So now, within that context, the question now will be for us in Nigeria, is the subsidy regime in Nigeria about welfare of citizens or about competitiveness of those who are involved in the petroleum value chains? And the answer, obviously, from the discussions over the years, and mark you, people also talk about removing subsidy, and I disagree with them on that. Because the same argument we have had in Nigeria in our conversation since 1966. If you check the data, you find that every successive government since then will talk about removing subsidy. And that once that is done, everything will normalize, so things will become okay. But the argument is always this, that you cannot remove subsidy when you have a defective structure in terms of the demand and supply and other aberrations within the system. So the way it then works is simply this. If you look at how the price of refined petroleum products, especially talking about the pumped prices, have behaved in the last few decades, they've been going upwards. In fact, if you look at the data, the regime where we had the most changes was when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was our president. 11 good times changes in the price of petroleum and refined petroleum products. 8 of them were increases, 3 of them were decreases. So, but if you look at how the pattern evolved over time, The worst in terms of percentage increase was when the late Chief Enestoneko was the head of state, because then we had a percentage increase that was far above 500% at once. Now, where I'm going simply is this. The real issues within our economy is not so much as whether subsidy exists or not. And I've made this argument in the last 35 years that I've been actively involved in this conversation. And that is to always point out that, look, insofar as we import refined petroleum products, what you call subsidy removal today will creep in tomorrow, unless the exchange value of your currency remains the same. The very day the exchange value of your currency changes, subsidy will creep back into your equation. So that means there are 5 critical issues that Nigeria should be looking at. First is the demand for refined petroleum products. Okay, again there, we have consistently failed to take account of the fact that refined products are not consumed only on the road. Take, for example, if you talk about fuel consumption in the US, they will tell you where between 24 and 35% of the fuel consumed in the US is on the roads, which means they very well understand the demand pattern. But we have never, ever come to terms with that in reality, to know that a lot of the fuel we consume actually goes to power electricity generators. Okay, that's on the one side. We've also had occasions where we argue for subsidy removal from the perspective of smuggling. I remember making a remark then that if refined products are being smuggled out of Nigeria, you don't put them in a pocket or lock them in a box. They go in containers that easily can be seen with physical eyes. So in which case, the real issue is that we don't have the political will to address where the challenges are. Second is the source of refined products. Like I said earlier, if you keep importing refined products, whatever challenges supply that, you will find yourself risk exposed to those challenges, maybe in terms of disruption to supply chains, maybe in terms of price vagaries in the international market, which is the problem with us in Nigeria, or in fact, exchange rate fluctuations. Third issue is when you consider exchange rate itself, as I said, remove subsidy 100 times, it will return into your price plate. Then there's the issue most people don't even talk about, and that is price equalization. Now, it runs against economic logic and also causes distortions. For you to say the price at which I buy a liter of fuel in Lagos is the same price somebody who buys a liter of fuel in Maiduguri will pay for it. That is against the logic of economics. So where do you put the cost of transportation? Where do you put the cost of, the logistics involved in the process? In which case, there is what we call differentiated pricing, depending on where you are located. It is like making an argument that there's a manufacturer in China who produces a product I consume in Nigeria, and therefore, the person in China and I in Nigeria should be paid the same price for the same product. That is against economic logic. Then the real big elephant in the room is fraud and sharp practices, which causes a lot of leakages. In fact, that is the issue for us as of today. We are talking about removing subsidy today, and accordingly such, because Nigeria is in a desperate situation where we need to expand government revenue base. And so we then realize that, there is a leakage somewhere that we call subsidy. But in reality, is it the subsidy per se, or really the fact that there are sharp practices that need to be dealt with, and then we return to the basic conceptual purpose of subsidy, which is welfare. So now, looking forward, therefore, yes, this might bring a respite in terms of a reallocation of resources as the federal government has claimed in doing this. But on the other hand, if you look again, because part of what I did was to look at the trend in our inflation rates since we began this journey in 1966 almost to date. If you look at that pattern, every occasion.
Yes, Dr. Adedipe, I was actually going there with headline inflation. Even now, you're talking back, but even as of today, 12.82%. It looks like the increase in price of PMS electricity tariff would actually worsen this as we move on. What can be done? Is there anything that can be done to cushion a possible inflationary blowback one way or the other?
Well, again, like I said, we've seen a whole lot of things in the past, okay? We had an occasion, a government came and said, look, we remove toll gates from all the expressways in Nigeria. And so that will be the kind of palliative. So we increase the price of fuel, you won't need to pay toll fare. All right. We had occasions where we talked about palliatives. In fact, in 2012, there was a massive increase in the pump price of petroleum to 140 naira per litre before Jonathan's government reduced it to 97 and then 87 naira per litre. So now the same argument was made then. Oh, okay, if we remove subsidy, people have to pay more for fuel, but how do we give that back to them? So usually at the end of the day, the general price level will settle somewhere, but never at the level where it was before the subsidy was removed. That is the pattern historically. So now that's why we say that in this argument, general price level, that's as measured in the inflation rate, is sticky downward, just like interest rate. That means it doesn't go down. So when prices go up in Nigeria, they remain up. So the reality is that there will be a spillover effect of this on the prices of commodities generally. So we've seen also in the past a situation where government said, okay, the way we address this is to put a lot of mass transit buses on the roads. But ask me today, where are those mass transit buses? So the reality is that the root cause of this problem, we have not found the courage to address it. So, and I don't see how this will not affect the welfare of Nigerians in general. It has happened before, and I see it happening yet again. That's my view about it. We can't escape it.
Doc, let us look at this. I've also gotten feedings from people that have been watching, our viewers and all of that. And they're saying that also there's some school of thoughts over this issue of the beneficial impact of domestic refineries coming on stream to reduce the pump price of PMS. One argues that much could change, while others believe the pump price would slide down. Now, what's your take? What positives do you see this impacting on the sector?
Very good. Now, there are three levels of normal in this, okay? The normal was what we had before, quote and unquote, we removed subsidy. The new normal is that we are now dealing with subsidy removed, prices of refined petroleum products reflecting the market value and interaction between demand and supply. What I term the next normal is when domestic refineries begin to work, especially the great expectation about the Dangote refinery. How will that price play out? Now, in my own view, what we experience is that pricing of products will follow the market, okay? And what it means then is that you can't appeal to Dangote refinery to sell its product at less than cost or equal to cost, because there is a projected profit margin that will ensure that that refinery is able to discharge its maturing obligations to those that funded the project on the one hand. Now, on the other hand, if you now say we want to ensure that prices remain stable within the system, that brings us back to subsidy, which is the conceptual thing I mentioned at the beginning, where you either give it to an industry or a business because you want to keep price at a certain low level. But then the argument will come again that will be like putting money in the hands of Dangote. So the welfare objective then can only be achieved under the scenario by justifying offering subsidy to Dangote refinery, either by way of discounted price of crude oil that Nigeria supplies, or making an arrangement that leaves Dangote refinery's profit intact. But I don't see that refinery deciding on its own to bring price down in any case, because really, I mean, its funding is a mix of equity and debt. So it has obligations to discharge over so many years in the future. So toward that, therefore, it needs to make money in order to pay the fund providers. So I don't see Dangote refinery coming to operation and bringing the price down. But maybe the one still at the concept stage, the Bua refinery, if it comes on, okay, also big enough, maybe by then competition might come in and probably trigger a process that can make prices to go downwards. So but the way I see it today is that until we achieve a situation where locally refined products are in large quantity, far in excess of domestic demand, that is only when we can expect a drop in price. And that won't come from only one producer. It will come from multiple producers within the market.
Wow. I want us to round up on this note. A lot is being expected. We just have like 60 seconds now, Dr. Adedipe. A lot is expected. Now we see another committee coming up to be in charge of another plan for 2050. What are we really looking at? A lot of projections, a lot of beautiful documents. We had the ERGP before now. What's your take on that? That might be a topic for another day, but what do you expect from this committee?
Well, I've said this repeatedly. Any plan a country makes that doesn't have an anchor is just an academic exercise. Question is, the development of Nigeria, what will be the anchor? If you look around most of the major economies around the world, each of them anchors their development around either a sector or a particular product or a few set of products. So what is the development anchor for Nigeria? Dubai, you can see everything they do is around tourism. Okay, and you look around the world, in many of the evolving and emerging nations, they anchor their development around a particular sector. What is our anchor? We have no anchor for development. Until I see that in a development document, I won't put much value on it, given my experience, maybe as a professional economist in the last 40 years in this country.
Dr. Biodun Adedipe, Chief Consultant, Adedipe Associates Limited. Is always interesting and educating having you join us on Business Nigeria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. God bless.